Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. And look, we have a special guest tonight. That's amazing.
We do. We have Jason Fry, author of National Divorce, A Plan for Peace. And we're going to talk about it during the show on WYSL, WLEA, and WCKR, the stuff that's going to go out over the radio. But of course, we're going to talk about not only that, but, also we're going to be talking about things like the Hunter Biden pardon. We're going to talk about a few other national issues later in the show, too. And you folks listening out there, you know how it goes. You have topics for us. Leave them in the comments. Y'all love to send us on tangents. That's how it goes. So leave your comments about where we ought to go. But I'm excited to talk about the national divorce thing. I think intellectually, things like peaceful secession it's something that I think libertarians and other folks take seriously as a way of exercising independence. So I'm excited to talk about it in a way that's not, not just like attacking people. Oh, you want to secede? You must be like a Confederate. Like, it's not just about that. It's about a way to exercise autonomy. And we won't go into it too much. This is the stuff that's going to be for the show.
Kevin, I want our listeners to realize that our radio show just expanded to 2 new radio stations. I think we don't say enough about that. WLEA and WCKR in the southern tier of New York State. It's kind of wild, right?
We're excited to be on down in Hornell, New York, and hopefully we'll keep expanding. What's the plan?
Yeah, man, we're nationwide.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump into the show. We'll kick it off and get going. All right. Ready, set.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. We're ready to go. Thanks to everybody out there listening to our show. Tonight, we have decided to do something a little different. We don't always have, we've had guests occasionally, but tonight we have a professional author with us, a guy that's wrote a book about national divorce, a peaceful secession, a strategy for peace.
Jason Fry is the author, and the book is National Divorce, A Plan for Peace.
We're
going to talk about what that is. So, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. So Jason, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you tell us about? Well, tell us about national.
Yeah, so I'm from Texas, a long way from New York. My family's been down here since the 1850s, long time. I have been involved with the Texas independence folks, Texas nationalist movement for 10 or 11 years. I've been writing for them off and on for the last 7 years. And my tipping point was when the Department of Justice started meddling in my day job, right?
Wow.
And so I could not believe that the most powerful government in the world was nitpicking my paperwork. That kind of pushed me a little further towards leave me alone.
Totally fair.
So I was a closet secessionist for quite some time. I wrote under a pseudonym for 6 or 7 years. But I intend to run for office one of these days. And so I thought, well, let's get out there. Let's start to build the brand. Let's start to send out the message that we can divide peacefully, right? Because as you kind of alluded earlier, the first thing people say is, Civil War, how'd that work out?
Civil
right?
War, yeah, that's exactly. Civil War, how did it work out? Well, the Union invaded the Confederacy. The Confederacy left for a whole bunch
the
of
government insisted on violence. That's how that worked out.
So, but it doesn't. Not all secession movements end up working out that way, right?
Correct.
There's
Absolutely.
particular
not.
circumstances in the Civil War. So tell us, what is your vision? You said a plan for peace.
Yeah.
What is your vision for what
several things?
secession looks like?
Again, largely libertarian flavored. So the whole thing starts with, I really do want you to have it your way, right? And I want to have it my way. And we've got to agree to leave each other alone, right? The main problem in politics with partisanship is that both parties are terrible about using the levers of power to have it their way at the expense of everybody on the other side. Both parties are terrible. They'll coerce the crap out of you, right? Just to get it their way on any given social issue. I think that's part of the problem. So
100%.
a piece of the solution is freedom. You're free to be New York and you do it how you want. That's fine. It can be different than how we do it in Texas. And I'm okay with that, right?
Jason, let me jump in and ask you
go ahead.
question.
Yeah, you bet.
We have a New York state lawmaker who wants us to secede from the union and join Canada. What would you say to her?
I would say that there is no reason for you to join Canada. That most United states have the capability to stand alone on the world stage if our own government would get out of the way, right? Our economies are sufficient. Our government structures are sufficient. Our populations are sufficient. Nobody says Micronesia shouldn't exist because they're so small. Even if New York City were to separate from upstate New York, we're talking how many million people in New York City? It's not my area. What, 10?
Around 9, 10.
Yeah, Micronesia is a country. It has 40,000 people, right? Nobody says Luxembourg can't exist because it's too small, right?
Yeah.
So everything we have in the United States almost is sufficiently large to stand on the world stage. Nobody says New Zealand can't exist because it's so small, right?
No, I think the New York State economy is like bigger than Germany's. Actually, the New York State economy is bigger than Germany.
I don't know New York. I know California is about the 5th largest economy in the world by itself. Texas is in about 8th or 9th place. New York, I'm sure, is right there in the top mix there. I just don't know. Again, I'm not as fluent in your stuff as I am mine. But if we are already, in the top 10 of countries worldwide, what else do we need? Right? So people say, well, but that relationship with the other states, with the United States, is what makes that go. Okay, fine. So it falls in half, and we're only in the top 50 of the 250 countries worldwide. I'll take that chance. Right? Every United State is sufficient to stand on its own, including New York. I was happy to see that lady say that.
All right, so
I don't know that I want to be part of Canada.
But yeah, I don't want to be part of Canada, but I want to talk to you. I want to ask you a question. If we fracture into, say, 50 different tiny little countries, and New York has decided to take on Pennsylvania, like we're going to go ahead and annex that. Like, that's something that concerns me, this fractured kind of divisiveness where all of a sudden we have 50 warring factions deciding that A, we don't get along anymore, and B, you have some resources that I want, which we do all over the world already. We're just going to bring that kind of battle home. What do you say about that?
2 takes on that. One, again, the libertarian answer is it's just as wrong to use force on those guys, right? The better answer is I have this product, you have that product, let's make a deal, right? New York City has huge economic resources, but not that much physical resources. They should be trading that. We will let you use our stock exchange, for example, in exchange for some of your oil. It comes down to free trade and beneficial trade, right? Every place has something different. It's a myth that every place should be self-sufficient, right? All the small countries in the world are not self-sufficient. They specialize in trade. So Cayman Islands is famous for nice weather and their financial services, right? So they don't have any resources. They're tiny islands with nice weather. So they figured out how to be a banking hub, and they trade in that internationally. Switzerland is kind of the same way. They're a small nation surrounded by other countries, but they have figured out how to handle money. And so they trade that for what they need. Texas in particular has pretty darn good oil resources, for example. I would like to think we could trade that for other stuff we need without having to have a war. Another angle would be that it takes truly large nations to have truly terrible ideas, make truly large wars. Okay, so the state of Rhode Island is not going to attack China. Okay.
Yeah.
The state of Pennsylvania and New York. So, okay, if they fought, that would not be cool. It would be bad. Anti-war of all kinds. But it would be 2 states of a few million people apiece. it would not be 40 million people dying in a world war like we're fixing to have, because our state is so freaking huge, right? Mm-hmm. So by dividing it up, the total amount of conflict, I think, goes down. You do have regional conflicts. I'm not saying that people won't fight over stuff. They will. They have all of humanity. But I would rather have some people fighting a state here and a state there than sending large countries to war against each other and killing millions of people. That's my take on that.
Fair enough. I mean, my skepticism for this might come in, like you'd mentioned free trade as an important avenue for like being able to build self-sustaining economies. Mm-hmm. By splitting into separate countries, doesn't that make that more complicated? Then you no longer have as easy movement between currencies if someone picks separate currencies, goods, immigration too. Like suddenly it's no longer like I just want to move to Pennsylvania because the New York economic climate stinks. Like it's an immigration thing.
So one of the things that I talk about is pre-sorting, right? So I do not expect my vision for this is not that on Tuesday we have a vote and on Wednesday we're independent and figure it out, we're gone. No, that's not how this works at all. The proposal that we have in Texas anyway is for the legislature to use the existing process to pass a law to authorize a referendum. The referendum starts a process where we send the guys upstairs and say, guys, we'd like to leave now. Here are 36 things we need to negotiate, right? On a 3-year plan, right? So that's kind of the way that I'm proposing. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene came out a while back and said national divorce, and the whole internet went nuts. Because it's a pretty dramatic proposal with nothing to back it up. And so that's part of why I wrote this book. I wanted to tie in the idea that maybe we could break up with the existing strategies of New Hampshire and Texas and California. There are independence movements in many places already. I think Florida's got one, Louisiana. Anyway, all legislative based, right? We're well past the idea that a bunch of guys with ARs in the woods are going to make a difference. That's not anybody's idea of a good time. Right?
We're talking about
who's a serious secessionist. We're talking about using legally established democratic processes to start negotiations to separate. I was sitting at the dinner table with my kids when Brexit passed, and I said, guys, you know what this means? This means Texas is going to be independent in your lifetime. I don't know when. Can't tell if it's next Tuesday, but if a major nation can split from another group of nations and say, we would like to be out now with a vote and nobody goes to war, that's a good sign.
So you anticipated what my next question was going to be, which was, can you name some successful secessionist movements in the modern era and how they worked? So Brexit being one example.
Brexit would be the most recent one. We were the first country to secede from the British Empire.
That one didn't end peacefully.
It did not. But how many other countries have seceded from Britain since then? Right. So I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I think there's 30 or 40 countries that used to be part of Britain that have become independent countries since World War II. Right. So they have turned loose of a lot of their stuff in peaceful ways. Most of those have not ended in war because they're following a process to deal with that.
Right. That's how Canada.
Let me ask you this, Jason. Do you have a plan for disentangling the financial incentives that are already present from interacting with the federal government?
Yeah. So the first thing to understand is, where do federal dollars come from? Number one, they print them out of thin air, but
that's where they come
from. On paper, they come from taxes, right? And where do taxes come from? They come from people. And where do people live? In states, right? So point number one is, there are no federal dollars that did not first start with a citizen of a state. Okay. So the logic is, if I quit giving it to them and just keep it, then the states could theoretically have the same amount of money. Now, we all know that there are some states that pay in more than they get out and other states that take out more than they pay in. Understood. But we're on short time here, but I talk about that in the book, about what each of those options would look like: the givers, the takers, and the even Stevens, right? How that would work out. But the key point is that if we maintain the state plus federal tax rate, we can maintain the state plus federal services while keeping our own money. And part of the reason to leave is that we don't want to buy some of that crap, right? Maybe I don't want to support blowing up every other single country in the world. And so I don't have to send those dollars out. I get to keep them here, right? So by choosing different priorities on spending, I think most states should be able to make it just fine because it's our money to begin with.
Right. I think some people would object. They'd say we need all of that, those federal income taxes, all the other taxes to do like big, great projects, right? Like we couldn't have built the interstate highway system if we didn't have a federal government to do this. We couldn't have put a man on the moon. Do you think that stuff is, what does that look like? Are we able to do big scalable projects without the might?
Maybe. I mean, we've got private industry putting people in space now.
You sure do.
Texas in particular, right? I don't know the answer to all of that stuff. I do know that, the federal solution to a problem usually costs more than any other possible solution. Is that fair? Right. So
I think that's
somehow,
yeah, by some amazing factor of like 100% more or whatever, they come up with numbers that boggle your mind. We have roads being built in New York State that cost, $1 million a mile,
billions of dollars. Yeah.
And you guys in Texas have roads that are costing $50,000 a mile. And it always baffles me that we can't get back to a sensible financial structure where we've privatized road building to the extent that we have a competitive market.
Right.
We've lost that somewhere.
Yeah, we have. And there were roads before 1913 when they made up income taxes, right?
Yeah, but they were like cobblestones and
actual highway budget. Most of the highway budget comes from fuel taxes, and it's a combination of state and federal fuel tax. So if there's 35 cents of taxes on Texas gas, and 18 of it is state and 20 of it is federal, guess what? We can keep the same tax rate and keep all that money, right? It's ours to begin with. And every state has that.
Yeah, Jason, arguably New York State would be sitting pretty with the financial.
Very much would.
Yeah, we contribute way more than we take out in federal dollars. According to the income tax. We could probably build a military, co-op New Hampshire and Vermont, probably take over Pennsylvania, maybe grab Rhode Island, let Maine secede to Canada, and all of a sudden now we've got like a multi-state solution.
Tim, we could just let people live and let live.
You lost me at takeover.
Yeah,
I know.
You might confederate with. You might make a mutual defense pact with.
Yeah. No, but going back to some of your point about like building stuff, though, right? I think about all right, why is Florida able to build high-speed rail, but California isn't, right? And if you had even less interference from the federal government with like the NEPA stuff, with other stuff, how much more would Texas be able to do with independence, right? If you're able to just build stuff without getting bogged down in bureaucracy and federal requirements and all this stuff.
What if we just built a truck that just ran and that's it?
And
it cost $20,000 because we didn't pay an extra $20,000 for computer crap to make it run all clean and nice. It's regulation that causes a lot of the problems. There are ways, Texas has energy stuff, right? We don't use it. We don't build natural gas power plants because they're regulated out of existence, right? Natural gas everywhere. We could have all the electricity in the world, but not right now.
It ends up being incredibly difficult. So there's a lot of potential to be unlocked without that. I mean, I think I do still slightly fall on the side of like, I'd rather just the federal government be cool and wither away, but
I do too, but I don't see it happening. That's kind of why I came out. I mean, I would rather, sure. But what we see is this huge flip-flop of politics every few years, depending on the color of the jersey of the bus driver, right? Mm-hmm. And they all use coercion, and they all flip back and forth. And, the regular folks, like, when was the last time you were able to even talk to your state rep, much less a congressperson or a senator? Good luck getting to the president, right?
No offense,
even as a
Jason,
famous radio guy, you're never going to get to those guys.
No offense, Jason, but Kevin and I both talk to our state reps as much as they'll listen to us. Yeah, if they're crazy enough to be out in public, Kevin and I will catch them and have a conversation.
That's great.
Look, I had a great rep who actually liked me, and we would talk a lot. the guy I ran against a guy for Senate, and we're friendly. Like, he says, well, I don't know if we're friendly. He says hello to me when we end up
That's good enough.
in the same areas.
Will he text you back? That's the key.
That's the big one, right?
Yeah, I think he just sent me a friend request on Facebook, but we were friends on Facebook. Then he unfriended me. Then he friended me again. So I don't know what's going on there, some sort of nonsense. But
part of that's because you've run for office and played the game.
Yeah, he's just powerless.
That puts you in a different category.
Yeah, he's a Republican in New York State, and he's absolutely powerless. He has no real say. We're one of the few solidly Republican districts. He's way overwhelmed on numbers.
Totally.
All right. Yep. So we have like a minute and a half with the radio show left. I know it already went pretty quick. So just like for those who are listening on the radio show, again, this is Jason Fry, author of National Divorce, A Plan for Peace. One more pitch for why people should check it out and why this is a legitimate and serious and legal plan
So the United States is divided already. Okay. We already don't get along on many ways. And, if we were a marriage, which we're not, but if we were, we would be at the point where sleeping in separate bedrooms and running separate bank accounts. And we really don't like each other, but we're still under the same umbrella. I think that's the point we are as a nation. And the most peaceful answer is to just go our separate ways. You be you over there. I'll be me over here. That's why the book is called A Plan for Peace. So can I talk about where you would get the book if you want to read one?
100%.
Yeah, so they are available on Amazon. If you think Jeff Bezos needs more money, they are also available at my website, national-divorce.com. I'll sell autographed copies from there. So national-divorce.com.
All right, folks who are listening online or on the radio, we dropped a link in the comments. So if you're listening on WYSL, you can go look at the comments. You can see that link if you forget the name of the website, national-divorce.com.
National-divorce.com.
Divorce. I got it.
The dash is important.
It's important. All right, James Fry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, so we are heading to break. We're going to be back, WYSL, WLEA, and WCKR audience. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right. So, Jason, thanks so much for joining us. I have one more. Yeah, one more quick question because we're in the break. This is gonna go in the podcast area, but like,
gotcha.
My one thing with the national divorce too. Well, my other thing with national divorce is like, man, like you and I were having a conversation here. Like we're New Yorkers, Tim and I both. You're from Texas, and I think there's a stereotype like, oh man, like people in those states don't get along.
Yeah, we're not supposed to like each other or something.
Right.
But like, because to me, so like my biggest argument against national divorce is actually like I think most of us have more things in common than we don't. It's fair. Like the differences tend to be like urban outliers and like just different cultural enclaves like of people who are very progressive or extremely conservative who want to use that power to impose their will on other people. But I think your average person, like 95% of us, don't want to do that. We just want to live and let live.
They just want to be left alone. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So is there, again, does that bring it to like the only solution is to like take away that ability to exercise power over other people, and is the only viable way to do that?
I mean, decentralization, I think, is the best way forward for that. I'm hopeful, I guess, that some of the current presidential shakeups will decentralize and deregulate and take off power. But if he somehow managed a 10% improvement, we'd still be 90% screwed, right? I mean, this thing is so far gone. We haven't had a president in my lifetime that hasn't ruled by executive order. We haven't had a Supreme Court in my lifetime that hasn't flip-flopped on social issues that they shouldn't be adjudicating to begin with. We haven't had in my lifetime fiscal responsibility except for the Bill Clinton years, perhaps, depending on how you count the math. This whole thing is headed in unsustainable directions. We've been at war since I was a kid with somebody, right? Undeclared, because Congress doesn't do its job either, right? So all of those things don't change because of the flavor of the week in the White House. Okay, sure, I'm a little happier with the Trump outcome than I would have been with a Harris outcome. neither one of those is going to change the trajectory of America back towards smaller, back towards leave me alone, back towards responsible. No, it's not going to happen. I think we have a better chance of each of us having it our way if we can break it down into smaller units. Because I really do want you to have it your way up yonder.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'd love for upstate New York to have some level of independence, and I say upstate specifically because New York State.
Yeah, y'all are an interesting dynamic because the city dominates all the politics, but
yeah, and I love New York City and want them to be New York City. Like upstate New York and New York City are just they have to be governed slightly differently, just because
they do.
They're different.
I've got some friends from up there that moved down here because they didn't like it specifically.
We see a lot of that. The conversation of, we had a divide New York State movement going on for a long time. It got like 75, 80,000 people strong. They were filing petitions. We even had legislation introduced in the New York State legislature. And as you might imagine, it really ended up going nowhere.
It got crushed by the big town.
Yeah, by New York City and Albany.
How long ago was that?
I want to say 4.5 years ago was probably
I didn't know
peak. Yeah, and it's kind of been sliding downhill ever since. We tried to get them to at the Otsego County Libertarian Party tried to do some cooperative stuff with them, and they got a little exclusionary all of a sudden, and it just kind of, people get entrenched and then they fall apart. Like that's what happened. They just didn't keep doing good outreach.
Yep, that's right. So I guess you guys know the Free State Project up the way from y'all, New Hampshire folks that are trying to do some independent stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting project to watch, and I wish them luck. I know, like, they haven't quite gotten everyone to move out there like they intended, but no, they're trying to do what they can to influence New Hampshire.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach. The way they do their legislative districts. I mean, it's got
they're so small.
It might work. It might work.
A legislative district of 24 people, and
it's like me and my 3 neighbors or something. Yeah, it looks pretty nice. So.
Yeah, Men with Sticks understands the conundrum in New York State: rural mountain people versus urban flatlanders. It's kind of
every state is that way.
It's kind of a real dynamic across the country.
It is. And my New Mexico in-laws complain about Albuquerque and Santa Fe dominating the politics. Texans complain about Houston and Austin. I mean, it's universal. But I would rather negotiate with people closer to me. I mean, I would rather have to deal with people in Austin, honestly, than frankly have to negotiate with people from New York City or LA about what we're doing in Texas. Right. And it's just a matter of proximity. I think, y'all are fine, but you need to negotiate with your people, your neighbors. That doesn't have to be this whole dadgum continent lumped together under one coercive government.
Fair enough. And that was sort of the intent from the beginning too. It's like, for the most part, states would be independent. You'd understand your own affairs and govern quasi independently.
Yep.
And for one reason or another, many reasons, the central power in Washington just kept growing and growing. Now everything goes through there.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, Jason, pleasure having you on. Appreciate it. And
appreciate the opportunity.
Folks listening, national-divorce.com.
Yep, that's right.
You want to check it out. All right. Jason, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Jason.
All right. So, man, it's a super interesting topic, and it's fun having them on.
Yeah, no, the conversation fascinates me. It always does. I love it, of course, when New York State talks about separating from downstate. I love the New Hampshire conversation, the saner voices. I enjoy the crazier voices, don't get me wrong, but the saner voices who are actually kind of putting in the hard work to make things happen and not just gesticulating on Twitter with crazy comments.
Right. No. It's interesting to hear people say, okay, like, here's where it's happened before. Here are the legal mechanisms to do it. Here's why it's not as scary as it sounds. It's not just people yelling, nope, everything's screwed. We gotta just like fall apart.
Jason's like Mr. Mellow. He's a pretty good spokesperson for it. He's like, kind of doesn't get amped up about anything. Very even keeled. I liked it. That was great.
It's interesting stuff. And I used to follow people like that, or people kind of adjacent to that, like the 10th Amendment Center back in the day. People were talking about like state rights stuff. and nullification and all this stuff. So it's an interesting topic because I'm just interested in it intellectually. I don't know that I'm like a pro national divorce guy, but I think it's an interesting topic, and I'm definitely willing to hear out people like Jason who are thinking about this stuff seriously and how can we find better ways to exercise liberty and independence. And maybe the only way to roll back the overwhelming power of the federal government is to just walk away.
Yeah, no, to further conversations, like I like the no tax on tips thing, because then we start talking about, well, okay, no tax on tips, no tax on people making under 30 grand a year, like no income tax on people. Like any conversation that pushes this dial towards freedom is something that I think is worth having. I can get emotional about it. I can pick a side. I can advocate. And so this one's tempting. Let's put it that way. It's just like, I'm not sure, like you're saying, I'm not sure. I think I would travel down that wormhole to further the conversation towards states' rights, towards, negotiating with your neighbor, not hating your neighbor. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was a great point that he was making inside there, that we can get along with our neighbors, that we may disagree, but at least we're just arguing a little bit with our neighbors. And that's a better system than federal edicts and incentivized nonsense that they're handing to us.
Yeah, 100%. So, all right, we'll get back to the show. We can continue this conversation, but we'll continue a little bit of it in the show so that our WYSL audience and our Hornell audience can get a little bit of this. And of course, leave your question now, Tim. I limited like where we put this tonight, so I think it limited our audience a bit. We gotta poke our audience.
I shared
trying to get everything on the.
Yeah, I shared it to my Facebook page, but it's not. Normally, I pick up a few. We get a few from my page, and we're not really getting that kind of response right now. And I don't know quite how to fix that.
Yeah. All right. We'll work on it. Just to.
We're missing Shelly. Shelly usually comes in on YouTube, but I thought she came in on the free solution page. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but all right, we'll figure it out and get everyone back over here. All right, so let's go back in and now. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
What's up, brother? How are you? Oh, wait, this isn't the beginning of the show.
No, it's in the beginning.
Segment. Yeah, we already
Second segment here, because we just had Jason Fry, who is the author of National Divorce: A Plan for Peace, on in the first segment. Fun talking to him, fun talking to someone who is like going through the intellectual exercises of thinking about like, how do states justify independence? Is it legal? Is it worth it? Does it actually lead to more peace? Is that the only way to scale back the power of the federal government is by just walking away? And so we had a great discussion about that. Continued the discussion a little bit further into the break too. So if you're listening on WYSL or WLEA or WCKR, then make sure you go find our podcast. We continued the conversation with Jason for a few minutes during the break. But no, I think it's interesting, and I take it serious. I don't think I'm on that page yet. I'm not on that level to say like national divorce is a good idea, but I take the concept seriously of, from an intellectual level, from a constitutional level, should states be able to say, no, this arrangement isn't working out for us anymore, we should be able to leave peacefully? I would say, yeah, you should. I don't know if it's a good idea, but you should be able to do that.
No, I like any kind of conversation that furthers the dime towards this discussion of states' rights, this discussion of decentralization, this discussion of how much power should the federal government have to incentivize or force its will on us. I think that conversations of national divorce can further those kind of ideas. I'd be curious hearing from the WSL audience and our two new radio stations about perhaps how they felt about the Divide New York State movement that was pretty popular about 5 years ago. That would be something I'd love to have another conversation with people about that, to see if we could revive that conversation. It was a good time. People were excited about it.
Yeah, no, send us an email if you're listening. Contact at afreesolution.com. Tim and I both get those emails. And that's yeah, we'd love to hear from you. We'll read them on the show because I know y'all aren't listening to the show live, so we can't read your comments. But if we get good emails, we'll read them on the show the week after. And speaking of comments, Dark Closet of Mine on YouTube said, I strongly disagree with him. I'm okay with states splitting up, but states leaving the union is a terrible idea. Yeah, fair enough, man.
Yeah,
dude, I wish you had. I wish we could have gotten you on the show while Jason was still here. But yeah, I get it. So I think I'm kind of against it too. But I think on an intellectual level, it should be legal and it should be allowed without the use of force, trying to compel a state to stay in the union.
All right, so that brings another subject up on this same vein. Like parts of northern Colorado wanted to cede into Wyoming. Parts of Oregon wanted to cede into Wyoming as well. What do you think about stuff like that?
No,
Idaho.
No.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, was it? Yeah, it was Idaho.
Yeah, you're right.
Fascinatingly, I didn't realize they cut 95% of their state regulations like back in like 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turns out, the state of Idaho is still there. It survived.
It's amazing, right?
It sounds like I'm exaggerating when I say 95. No, I mean like literally 95%. Like that is a quote from a Wall Street Journal article. 95% of the regulations were either drastically pared back or eliminated altogether.
What a wonderful world that would be. I do think that there could come a time where we should just take all of the laws that we have on the books and just get rid of them and see which ones naturally come back and
we'll just sunset
constitutional
some stuff,
jubilee,
right?
or something like that. What was that? There's a term for it,
right?
I think it's
jubilee. I think I like the kind of sunset like clauses for a lot of laws. We're like, okay, if this is still a good thing, like set it for, it could even be for like 10 years or something. This is a law and it's going to be for 10 years. If you want to keep it, you got to vote it again in 10 years. Fair enough.
I think that's fair.
And to continue, the follow-up from Dark Closet of Mine on YouTube says, the massive disruption it would cause for the people that live there would be a nightmare. Can you imagine if New York State went to join Canada? Would you want to stay here? No, I honestly, I probably wouldn't. I don't. I've heard enough about Canadian healthcare, specifically to how they treat like the heart condition I had earlier this year that required surgery. So remember, I had a hole in my heart. There's a Facebook group of people who like talk about like getting that treatment. Canada and UK, people are waiting for months. Like in the UK, like the NIH system, and I know that's not Canada, but Canada has similar problems. It'd be like, oh, it's not that bad yet. Like I know your heart's swollen, but like you've only had one stroke, so like, it's not that urgent to fix it.
We save the special surgeries for people that have had 3 strokes, Kevin.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I know. I did not want to wait till I had a stroke or heart attack to get the hole in my heart fixed. I'm glad my, insurance company's just like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sure, we'll cover it. Great.
Yeah, get her done.
Yeah, it causes so many expensive problems down the road. But no, I do like to Dark Closet of Mine's point, like, and I brought it up with Jason too, is like I think from like an immigration perspective, like you think like people from Texas or Florida are mad now when New Yorkers come down there? Like literally they will prohibit you from going down there. It will be an immigration issue. They will not have open borders. I think open borders within the United States, I mean, beyond that, like work pretty well, actually. Getting people to be able to move. So like talented New Yorkers go down to South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, where they can be more productive and beneficial to those states is a good thing. And it sends a message to New York State that if you want people to stay here, you're going to have to fix some stuff. I think the movement of people, especially within the U.S., is a good thing, and this would make it really difficult.
Yeah, and just like they are fixing stuff, Kevin, as of January 1st, the minimum wage is going up.
Hooray.
Yeah, hooray. That's going to work out great. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, we're just going to get more robots, Tim. It's going to be fine.
We're already there. Like I'm telling you, Taco Bell is going to be a ordering kiosk and one guy like dumping meat product into a bin A, cheese product into bin B, and then reloading the taco shells in bin C and reloading the tortilla shells in bin D. And that's going to be the job. One dude.
Gosh darn it, I will still eat it.
Me too. Me too. No, don't get me wrong. Man. Yeah. I mean, it's still going to be my lunch once a week, my special treat to myself, Taco Bell.
No, but so there's some serious issues. John Thuman on YouTube says Kevin is the weather. Andy told us that. Yeah. Just the weather. That's the reason why people are moving out. So on a sort of related topic, an interesting is happening on a lot of sovereign Native American land, both in the U.S. and Canada. And I saw this story on Twitter the other day where, so like in most states, New York State included, it is illegal for car companies to directly sell to consumers. They have to sell their vehicles to a dealership to then sell those to a customer, right? Tesla doesn't like this. Tesla is not a fan of doing that. They want to be able to just sell directly to their consumers. They don't want to have to deal with the dealership laws, which to them, they see that as a thing where it's just adding an extra cost where there doesn't need to be one. So interestingly enough, the Oneida Nation is going to bring in a Tesla showroom. So right here in upstate New York in 2025.
So that's fantastic. They don't have to follow certain federal laws that the rest of us do have to follow. So they don't have to cooperate with this licensing scam or scheme where your local dealership has to buy a vehicle to take all of the risk onto themselves. Like this is very interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think? Are you excited? I think you're excited.
No, I think it's cool, and I feel like this is one of those laws where like it's not really necessary. It's sort of like the taxi laws that like kind of got semi demolished by Uber and Lyft and things like that. I think it's going to be one of those things where someone's you know what are you going to do? And no one's going to stop the Oneida Nation because the Oneida Nation already does a bunch of other stuff like the casinos over there, Turning Stone, this whole thing. And they're just going all right, we're just going to open this just like we've done that. And we have our tax-free cigarettes and all this other stuff. And people are going to like that model. And then eventually it's just going to go away by public pressure.
I think it works, right? Like, and that kind of is the same. It's synonymous a little bit to what I'm saying about once we start having these conversations, perhaps they have to answer our demands, right? Like if we start moving in a direction, they have to come up with something better that we like, or we will go forward.
Yeah, the market's just gonna keep plowing forward based on like what the people actually want. And it's interesting, like because this isn't exactly a secession related thing; it's more of like a sovereignty type of thing, particularly among Native American lands. But I saw like there's a few tribes, including one up in Vancouver, Canada, that like they have a chunk of area that's considered sovereign land in the city of Vancouver. And what are they doing with it? They eliminated zoning. They're just like, you know what? We're just going to build a bunch of like dense housing. We're just going to build a bunch of like housing here because it's illegal everywhere else. And we think this is a good opportunity. Great, man. You're going to eliminate zoning. That's awesome. But it's funny because there are people mad about it. Like, no, that's not traditional tribal ways. And the tribe's like, no, this is fine. Our people need cheap housing. We're going to build housing. Like,
I love it. I love it. Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a problem, there's a solution. So that's great. And as always, the solution appears to be less government regulations lend itself to success, period.
Yeah, just kind of let people do their thing, right? That's always a solution. This is a free solution. So yeah, like our not surprisingly, we incline towards let people do their own thing and figure stuff out and experiment. And this to me seems cool. I think we should do more of it. Whether it's, just Tesla showrooms or eliminating zoning on tribal controlled land. Great. And if they want to do that and they want, to allow like either their own residents or other people to live there, cool, man. Do your thing. I think there should be more opportunities for people to be able to run experiments like that.
It makes sense to me, Kevin, as you know. I'm a big fan of anything that beats the system. I'm a big fan of Uber. I'm a big fan of Airbnb. These things break the mold that we've forced on ourselves that Airbnb has breathed a new life into our community in this area. Even though we still have houses falling in the ground, a lot of people are taking a lot more risk, and the risk is paying off because we have an opportunity to serve a dense market of tourists that come here to take their kids to play baseball, and it works out great. It's a disruptor, and it's done a great job. People complain that there's not enough housing. That's not the issue. We still have small towns doubling down on zoning, still making it ridiculously hard, coming up with like new regulations about how your lawn has to be kept, and they're not learning the lesson that how Airbnb is going to blow a hole right through that, you know. But they will.
Yeah, no, it'd be great to do that. I mean, like, it's funny though, because like we get I don't know, I'm gonna trash Canada a little bit. Justin Trudeau, I know, up in Canada, is talking about like, oh yeah, these short-term rentals, that's why prices are going up in these Canadian cities. I'm like, we've got to ban that. I'm like, wait, why does everyone get stuck on that idea? Like, that's the only thing. Like, oh, we have a fixed housing supply and these people are like eating it up. Like, no, just build more stuff. People want to be there. They want to visit. They want to do things. Like, let them do that. That's all you got to do. Let them do their thing. It's fine.
One of
It's
Canada's
really okay.
hugest resources is trees. You use trees to build houses. This could really work out in a great way. It could turn into something big for Canada.
Yeah, and like I said, I just get mad at, like, I saw that today, but like this happens in Rochester too, where like the city council members like, yeah, it's the greedy developers and the greedy owners of Airbnbs that are really causing our city problems. Not us as city council blocking any housing from getting built at all. It's the greedy people. That's it. They're the cause of the problem. Blame those guys.
You should rent your house to somebody that is not going to pay you, that is going to destroy your house, and then we'll still call you greedy after you lose your life savings, taking a risk that we've slanted the odds so drastically against you.
They're trying to pass a new eviction law in Rochester that used to apply at statewide applies to people with 10 properties and up, but Rochester's trying to make it so it applies to anyone with even one property.
Oh, fantastic.
So it'll be incredibly difficult to evict anyone, and like we've talked about this a bunch before, we're apparently landlord sympathizers on this show.
We are.
I am. I mean, like, legitimately, like, because we're just like, I don't know, man, like there has to be some level of like a reasonableness to say like, hey, if you're not paying your rent and you're just destroying the place and not letting the landlord fix it and then complaining about it and then like sitting and not like doing anything except for making the situation worse for everybody, the landlord should be able to evict you. I think that sounds reasonable. I'm sorry. Like, I know there's some like marginal, really tough situations where there are bad landlords trying to kick people out for no reason. That stinks. Those are like edge cases. And if we had enough housing, kicking you out of housing would not be as big of a deal. But because we have less housing, it is a crisis for families who get kicked out because everything is expensive and scarce. The solution to that, build more.
Yeah. Do you remember Norwich, New York came up with the perfect solution to that problem? The local government was going to go ahead and seize these problem properties where poor people were accumulating and the guy can't evict them. And so what you have is a den of trouble. And so now the city of Norwich is going to seize those properties and take control of them, clean them up, and then resell them. Perfect.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, though, we do have to head to break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Government creates problems to solve problems, to create problems, to solve problems. It's this circular nonsense that just...
If they don't create problems, why would we pay them to solve our problems? Right? Like, what are we going to even be paying them for then?
That's a good question. Maybe, what if we didn't even need them? What if they would just go away? That would be awesome.
All right. So I think I want to just we'll go back into the radio show in a minute, and we'll just jump into. Are we ready to talk about our buddy, libertarian icon Hunter Biden?
Absolutely, brother. I'm ready.
Let's talk about Hunter Biden. All right, so let's head back in like 10 seconds. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson here today, joined by Tim, the Freedomarian O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and once again, I want to say thank you to our Facebook audience, our Twitter audience, our audiences at WYSL, WLEA and WCKR. We picked up a couple of radio stations down in the Hornell area. I think this thing's getting popping, dude. Like we're
What are you
huge.
gonna do? Yo,
Yeah, we're
spread
getting
the
huge.
word. Spread the word. All right, and we're finally picking up some steam now that our guest is gone. We're picking up some steam online. Shelly, thanks for joining us. John, thanks for being here. Appreciate y'all leaving the comments. And so we do want to talk about libertarian icon Hunter Biden.
The man, the myth, the legend, Hunter Biden. Poor guy.
Poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy.
So the political machine was going after him. Political prosecution, lawfare, going after Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
Luckily, Joe Biden, president of law and order, president of rule of law, he said it straight, pardoning his son, correcting an injustice for the man who all he wanted to do was use drugs and buy guns. Libertarian hero.
Arguably, there were things about this case, Kevin, that I thought Hunter Biden could have became a libertarian hero. He had Second Amendment challenges. Yeah, he had Second Amendment challenges to the drug charge or the gun charges that he was facing. He had not chosen to avail himself of those as of yet, but under appeal, he might have taken these things all the way to the Supreme Court, taking advantage of some other rulings that had recently come down the pipe. It could have been a very interesting thing for gun rights. There were other things that are less clear that I could stand behind. There were some allegations of underage, inactivity with younger ladies. Those things are reprehensible.
Yeah, he's done some stuff that might have been a bit shady, both legal and illegal. It's not necessarily a great case, but there was an interesting Second Amendment challenge to be had in his case, and unfortunately, he didn't exercise that challenge. He tried to get a plea deal, which would have weirdly, like, it's kind of removed all crimes. Which again, they only really went after him for like the gun thing and taxes thing, right?
Yeah.
So those are the two things they went after him for. And he had this plea deal that's like, okay, we're also going to have this plea deal for all other crimes that might have happened. You've not mentioned here. Okay. That fell through, got convicted. And then Joe Biden issues his pardon that says, okay, any crimes done between 2014 and December 1st, 2024, totally forgiven for any of those, like even potential crimes that happened. I'm like, why didn't he just do the couple things he was convicted of? What other crimes, Joe Biden? What are the other crimes, man?
I'm going to go with this, Kevin. He didn't really commit any other crimes, but they would have kept investigating him and exposing this level of corruption that all of these big names in politics participate in. We've talked about it on the show a million times, but they're over in foreign countries selling access to the U.S. budgetary process. It is unfortunately completely legal, but a continuous investigation of potentially illegal activity would have exposed some of that corruption. Now Hunter has kind of dodged a bullet there, or at least Joe Biden's legacy has dodged a bullet there. The door is kind of closed on those continuing, ongoing investigations. I saw some interesting debate about it, but what do you think about that? That this is just a cover to hide legal but corrupt activity that would have been investigated ad nauseum, probably eventually ending in some sort of process crime charge that wouldn't have really mattered, but they might have exposed some levels of corruption.
Tim, I think for once you were actually in line with mainstream opinion. I think that's actually like that's a pretty normie opinion on this. Is that cool? Like there was probably something else going on there.
Yeah.
And that's why the blanket pardon was issued. Because why was Hunter Biden on Burisma? What was he doing with like Ukrainian national gas companies? And again, this is prior to the Euromaidan thing. Like he was involved in all these like weird companies over in Ukraine where the corruption problems were far more serious than they are today, even in the Ukrainian government. And and somehow like Biden's leading the task force over there, and he's all involved in this stuff. Okay, so yeah, I think you're probably
come on, man. You know, like
yeah,
I don't
and there might
it.
again we've talked
Oh,
about there's probably not even anything like necessarily illegal about it, but there's a bunch of stuff that people are going to find super gross. I think that's
luckily for me, I'm ahead of the curve. I've always found it super gross. It's absolutely a super gross situation. What they are doing is literally corrupt. Okay, just so happens to be legal, but it's literally corrupt. It's a perversion of the system. It's nonsense.
Shelley says if Biden had just pardoned for the gun charge, I'd be fine with it. But the timeline's sketchy. Only God can absolve for a lifetime. Well, he didn't absolve for a lifetime. So if he committed crimes on December 2nd, then still legally liable for those. But December 1st, though, he could go nuts. Could have killed some people. Still a state crime. Can't forgive that. If he had killed people in a federal crime way, get blanket pardon. Could have done all sorts of federal crimes on December 1st. But no, it's weird. It's weird. I don't like it. And like I think the Democrats like it. The Democrats are like, man, y'all were all the Democrat like senators and congressmen and spokespeople were like, Joe Biden respects the rule of law. He would never abuse the pardon power in the way that Donald Trump would. That's why we need Joe Biden as our president, or whatever, right? Like as before he dropped out, that because he's a man with integrity, and
Man,
he
I
ends up
heard
doing it.
Yeah, I heard a video compilation of multiple news outlets using this fact that Joe Biden is way too honorable to pardon Hunter Biden. And it was all just this way of trying to attack Trump for being somewhat dubious legally. And just
Which,
going on and on and on
which
ad
like
nauseum. And it
Which
was like,
he is dubious legally. He gave
sure.
pardons to like his buddies, like
Yeah.
Dinesh D'Souza and Steve Bannon, who like actually did rip people off. Steve Bannon did, like he took money, and like whoever. But no, but they tried to position themselves like, but we're better than that. We're the party of integrity, and they Jon Stewart had a great thing about it. It was like they keep breaking their own rules that they set up for themselves. They could just not mention it. They could just not go after that attack line and been like, Joe Biden could have said, "Of course I'm gonna pardon my son. He's my son." Like I don't care what people think of it. That's the one thing I'm gonna do, because every single president has like done something like that. But for goodness sakes, I heard about like Abraham Lincoln apparently did that. He pardoned like his sister-in-law or something who was like a Confederate.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, yeah, like they set themselves up for failure. And just making the party feel further alienated from like the American people who are just like, man, can we just stop with this? You didn't have to do that. You could have not set yourself up for we're better than you, and then breaking the own rule that you set up for yourself.
I do think that the mouthpieces of the Democrat Party have a tough road to hoe here right now. Like they've kind of like staked their claim on Joe Biden being a man of integrity, when in fact, this is exactly what we expect. This is exactly what was always going to happen, and here we are. Yeah. Now it happened.
I mean, what do you expect? The dude's been a senator for what, like 50 years?
700 years.
700 years since the founding of the republic.
Yeah, at least
shook hands with George Washington. No, but yeah, he's been around forever. Like, so, and he's been able to stay in power forever. There is a certain level of like shadiness that goes along with doing that, unfortunately. And I wish that were not the case. I feel like I'm betraying my like American virtuous ideals by admitting that like that is a necessary character trait of people in power, but unfortunately that seems to be the case.
I think it's necessary given the current system and the set of incentives that we have. I think that's real. I don't think that it would be if the system itself could be better, would it be necessary? That's obviously, is that something Kevin and Tim can fix on a free solution? I doubt it, but the system has perverse incentives. Therefore, narcissists and power mongers rise to the top. That's just the way that it's always going to work. Look, Kevin, Hunter was a bag man, okay? Like, whatever we want to say, Hunter was literally collecting money, giving it to his friends. However you want to look at it, bagmen always get caught. they always get clipped. They always have to do a little bit of time, and then when they get out, they still get some big money because the family takes care of them. Yes, I am drawing a parallel to a organized crime scenario that these guys have legalized for decades. Like, there's a reason why Mitch McConnell's worth $70 million. There's a reason why Nancy Pelosi is worth $70 million. These guys are playing a corrupt game of trading favors for money, and all of them have bagmen. Hunter was Joe's bagman. That's the bottom line. 10% for the big guy was a real thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It kind of was. I mean, I don't think it's totally unfair to compare governments to like organized crime. And again, I say this as like just an intellectual exercise. That's kind of what government started out as. Government started out as, hey, a bunch of people are going to get together with these sticks, and we're going to protect your land for a price. We'll beat down the other people, but you're gonna give us a cut.
We'll beat down the bad guys.
Yeah,
by being the bad guys.
Yes, so that's sort of what it is. It hasn't fully left our system yet. That is how things works, which is unfortunate. And I hope it doesn't continue to be that way. I hope we don't normalize and accept like this level of like, I don't know, medium grade corruption that exists.
Yeah. We'll get back to being quiet about it, buddy. Don't worry. They'll hide it much better. There'll be much smaller players. Trump won't be disrupting the system forever. I do think that some of this came out because Trump was so antithetical to the existing power structure that somehow they had to tear down the existing power structure. And Hunter was a perfect target. He was very convenient. He was, so obviously corrupt, so obviously connected through his father's influence to businesses that he had no business being connected to.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, not great stuff. And again, I don't really expect Trump to be any better. So like, I mean, not that anyone on this audience is going to come after me for that, but like,
no,
he's not really any better. The same thing with his family members.
Concerns, Kevin.
Yeah.
About Trump and his wild spending, his hawkish stances. Look, he's ready. One thing I'm a big fan of, though, is like, well, actually, I'm not a big fan of it, but let's talk it over. Trump wants to make Canada the 51st state.
Apparently that's what happened in his conversation with Trudeau. Is like, he's like, well, if you can't handle the tariffs, like, we can just annex you.
Yeah, you could be the governor. And it would be a great thing. You could be the 51st state, and we'll all work together. And
just make Canada all one big state. All right.
Yeah,
it's not even like we're gonna add like 4 states or anything. I mean, we're not gonna add like 8 progressive senators. Like,
yeah, no, that'd be dangerous. That would be dangerous. We want the Canadians having no more than 2 senators and no more than, I don't know, 5 representatives, something like that.
I mean. Like, most of Canada is just empty land. Like, and I'm not attacking Canada for that. I mean, like, most of Canada lives in like a little chunk of Ontario and like like the southern part of like where Vancouver is.
It's a barren wasteland. It's ice, bro.
No, I mean, it's all like rural Alaska up there. Like, it really is. Like, but most Canadians live in like a very tiny like sliver of like the southern part that's touching the United States.
Correct.
So, and again, that's not an attack. That's just a fact. And I say that knowing that like our signal does technically reach in Canada. I don't know if there are any Canadians listening, but like technically it can get up there. On the WYSL side.
All right. South Korean martial law, Kevin, lasted for about 12 hours. It's already over.
Yeah, couple hours. No, it's wild because like the president's like, nope, I'm declaring martial law. They're North Korean elements that are dangerous to our country, so we're going to lock down the press and prohibit parliament from gathering and blah blah blah. And to their credit, the South Koreans like broke through the military lines surrounding parliament, jumped the fences and barricades, went into their parliament building, and held a vote to like shut it down.
It was a wild reaction, a wild appropriate reaction where they just said, "Oh no, you don't, sir. Oh no, you don't.
You're not going to do it."
now that guy's getting, I think, impeached.
He's going to get impeached.
Yeah, he's getting impeached. It's
fair.
That's
Can't
a proper response. Yeah, that's a proper response.
It's what a republic's supposed to do. All right. On that note, though, we do have to head out. We're out of time on the WYSL show and the radio show. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We'll be back next week. Have a wonderful weekend, folks. Take care. All right. But yeah, no, with the martial law thing, Rand Paul also had an interesting tweet about that today, because he talked about, like, hey, if anyone tries to pull this in the U.S. with presidential emergencies, which is something that happens from time to time, we should make it so that you can only continue certain types of presidential emergencies with limited powers only with a majority vote of Congress. And I think that seems reasonable.
For a senator, like him and based Mike Lee are the guys that actually seem to consistently fall back on positions that protect individual rights and liberties, that protect the human side of government, the small guys, us, people like us who would not agree with an edict of a martial law. Like, so especially Rand Paul does a great job,
Yeah, no, he does. He had the tariff bill lately too, and we'll see if it gets done before the new Congress. But he has a bill that says the executive can't just unilaterally impose tariffs on goods from other countries; that it has to be an act of Congress. So it rolls back the national security tariff laws that we have now, where the president. This is why President Trump can just say declare a tariff on steel, and President Biden can continue that. Rand Paul's trying to take that away, which I think is good. You shouldn't be able to just impose taxes on people like that.
Kevin, I have a trade deficit with Walmart this year, and if they don't start supporting this show, I'm not buying anything from them anymore.
I think that's totally fair. Walmart, you need to correct this trade deficit, this trade imbalance here.
We have a trade. Yes, we have a trade imbalance, guys. I'm just using that as an example to point out the absurdity of some of the things that are arguments that are used to persuade you that tariffs are in your best interest, right? Like, I buy things from China because the price is right, they're available, and they're a manufacturing powerhouse. Certainly, we could talk about whether we should or not be based on a lot of Chinese people are treated as slaves. That's something else. That's kind of a different issue. We're empowering by buying their products, though. We're on some level empowering the workers in that country. And what we hope for is long-term improvement. And I think that on some level we're seeing it, right?
Yeah. So hopefully seeing a little bit of that, but I don't know. Just try not to cough into the microphone, so it's a bit distracted there. So I'm looking at some of the comments here. Matthew asks, is that an M1 Abrams model behind you, Tim? You got a little tank on your shelf.
I do. Yeah. I think it is. My younger brother got it for me for Christmas a few years back, and I do believe it's an M1 Abrams. I do have plans for I believe it's an M45, a Korean tank. That I could probably build from scratch because I have the whole schematics. I could wire it. I could run the hydraulics. Just happened to turn up in a former military guy's house that I bought and renovated. And so I don't know. I feel very gifted and blessed that I could, if I had enough steel, build an M45 tank.
Maybe. There you go.
It'd be pretty wild.
Yeah, Tim's going to be on a watch list now. Look out, guys.
No, I don't even know if it's legal for me to have it. I would certainly cede it back to whomever is supposed to have it. But this guy was a Korean War vet, and a corporal in the what is it called, the motor pool or whatever, the repair shop. So this guy actually repaired tanks. So he had to have the Chiltey diagrams and the manual. So I believe that's all it is stuff that was his personal property. Jaguar is awesome. I'm gonna buy one.
Did you see their weird rebrand?
Nah, of
Pink
course I
stuff.
did. I'd look at that stuff and I'm just like, what is this? What is this? What is this?
No. So someone at an agency like what I work with, like they got full of big ideas.
Wow.
Trying to do
An
something to
iconic,
stand out.
yeah, it's an iconic car. It's got a vibe. The vibe that they have rebranded to does not seem to match
Yeah,
what
I know.
I think is
Dark
right.
Clouds of Mine. You said thanks for not talking about it. You brought it up, man. You brought it up. Listen,
I'm just saying.
no, I listen. I do marketing all day. I could talk about it for a while. I'm not going to talk about it because this is a politics show. I could have a separate marketing podcast for that, which I am not going to do because I do not have time. But
correct. You're busy marketing. You're busy marketing.
That's right,
man. I am struggling with words tonight.
Words are tough. So Tim, we forgot to ask. If offered, would you accept the nomination to head up the DEA?
Arguably, I am very proud of I had a very successful week on Twitter, Kevin. It was just epic. Trump nominated that joker from Florida who arrested a preacher. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Do you know what his name was off the top of your head?
Oh no, I had it up, and I want to make sure I get it right. Because it's oh no, where is it? Guy's name, but yeah, the sheriff from Florida who had arrested a pastor during COVID for holding services.
Chad Chronister. Chad Chronister, sheriff of Hillsborough County in Florida, got ratioed so bad after being nominated to head the Drug Enforcement Administration on Twitter that he decided perhaps that job was not for him. I did some small part in that. I referred to a tweet that Thomas Massey had written, and I found Chad's statement on Twitter bragging about his arrest of this pastor whose name is going to be harder. Dr. Ronald Howard Brown, pastor of the River at Tampa Bay Church, who intentionally and repeatedly disregarded state and local public health orders, which put his congregation and our community in danger. This guy put this on Twitter March 30th, 2020, and he was going to be Trump's nominee to be the DEA. This felt a little bit like we were getting just a tiny bit of COVID justice tyranny. But anyways, I went to that tweet from March 30th, 2020, said, man, I hope this ruins your nomination. And I got a couple hundred likes on it and plenty of comments. And lo and behold, Chad Chronister is no longer has withdrawn his name from consideration.
Tim, yeah, I think you can take credit for that. I think that's fair. Go ahead and take a victory lap on that one.
All right.
It's a good thing that here's a stinker of a nominee for that. I mean, we could just maybe leave the DEA just empty for a while. Like we don't need to fill that spot. Temporary chair, just give it a rest for a minute. Maybe wind down the war on drugs. Like the FBI's got it. Cash Patel's got it. That guy, he seems like he's really on it.
I mean, look, Cash Patel, just because of the from the left, I think he's got to be perfect. And some centrists too. Some Republicans don't like this guy. So that's kind of the guy I want. I'm kind of excited.
Dash?
Yeah.
He is for sure going to be disruptive. That's going to be it's kind of his thing. He served in the Trump administration last time. What did he say? He said something like, I want to like tear down the FBI and replace it with like a museum of the deep state. Which sounds awesome. But my suspicion is that he's not going to tear down the FBI and replace it with nothing and salt the earth. My suspicion is he's going to make an FBI that's loyal to Trump, which sure. I don't think is an improvement over the FBI as it exists now. It's just a different form of crappy FBI. So hopefully I'm wrong, and he really does like make some serious reforms, because there's problems with the FBI, lots and lots of problems with the FBI, and particularly in the way that like they acted weird and intervened in national politics over the last 10 years. Both like interfering with the Clinton campaign and with Trump. They went after both national candidates. They need to butt out, and their law enforcement role needs to be like limited to stuff that really does require some sort of coordination across state lines. Like I'm not a total like abolish the FBI guy, but I'm like, they've gone way, way, way out of scope.
All right, so Kevin, I lean towards being an abolish the FBI guy, because I go back through and I try to find stories where what they have done has been unbiased, incredibly successful, and not some version of entrapment. But when I look at all of their biggest stories, like the complete failure to craft a narrative that makes sense about the Las Vegas shooter, the Middletown Four, who the real criminal there was their FBI informant. That dude is now in Pakistan. That dude's kid is now in jail for an uninspected, unmaintained limousine that killed 21 people. Like, that guy is a real criminal. The FBI got caught 4 like moderately functioning adults who brought gasoline to a church at this guy that's in Pakistan's request, who paid them. This guy paid them to bring that stuff to this church or a mosque. I can't remember which it was. These guys end up in jail for 10 years for planning a terrorist attack. The FBI's informant escapes with FBI money to Pakistan. These guys got released on a compassionate release program. There's other stories like this. There's kids out of Rochester that were like 15 years old that the FBI talked into becoming part of a terrorist group, then arrested them. Right?
There's a guy. There's a mentally ill, like,
there we go, mentally
homeless dude who was going to commit a machete attack in my neighborhood, actually, right up the road over at Merchants Road. But when you delve into the details of like what it was, he was going to do it on behalf of ISIS. But like, you look at the records, like, man, it sort of seems like this guy would have not had the knowledge, the ideology, or the means, because literally his FBI handlers drove him to Walmart to go and buy the weapons and materials to carry out the attack, because he couldn't do it himself. Didn't have the money, didn't have the transportation to wherewithal to do it. This dude was not capable of carrying out an attack, like, in any sense of the word, without the FBI pushing him along, goading him to do this, and then literally driving him to Walmart to go and get the materials to try to do the attack, and then arresting him afterwards. And I know, like, local reporters are like, no, but like, he said in courtroom that he was loyal to ISIS and he was going to go be a martyr for them. And I'm like, yeah, dude, like, he was pushed into doing this. Like, the whole time he wasn't really talking to ISIS. He was talking to the FBI the entire time.
The entire 10 of the 12 Michigan kidnappers of the Gretchen Whitmer plot. Whitmer works. I mean, I pretend not to do it on purpose, but 10 of the 12 people involved in that plot were FBI affiliates or FBI agents. And luckily, at least, we caught that one early on before the two dudes that were literally like, all right, I guess we'll go kidnap the governor because I got some cool friends now. You know, like, at least those guys are getting the air is being let out of that tire against those guys.
Yeah. No, so you're convincing me. Like, maybe like there's nothing that like state police can't like reasonably coordinate with over state lines, right? Like, like, yeah, just grow up, coordinate those things. You don't need to.
And maybe then the state police would be too busy doing real stuff that they wouldn't be out there writing tickets.
I mean, they are. Yeah, I've talked to like state police officers do like interesting stuff. Talked to someone who did stuff with like theft rings, like people stealing like Tide and stuff, like where they'd go and like just like raid a Walmart or whatever, and then they would use that to like fund some like pretty ugly brutal stuff. But yeah.
They managed to quash the catalytic converter scourge that was going on around here by working relatively politely and relatively closely with the local scrap yards. They're like, look, we don't want to try to drive you guys out of business, but like if somebody shows up with 5 catalytic converters, you need to call us right away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just give us a
there's something
call,
wrong with that.
get their number, give us a call, set the catalytic converters aside. We're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to them. That's all we're trying to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It did get
reasonable.
so bad that one of the scrap yards won't take catalytic converters anymore because they're just like, what is this? Every time somebody brings a catalytic, you know how it can be
stolen. It's but no, I mean there's a problem where like a small number of people cause a disproportionate amount of crime. And like I think that is, again, I'm not abolished a police kind of guy either. Like I think it is worth the police's time, and it's worth having police to go after people who are making other folks miserable by taking their stuff or hurting them. I think that's reasonable. So again, does that translate to we need an FBI? I don't know.
I'm still mad that I got my plates read and got my last uninspected vehicle ticket. So I'm trying to fight it in court, but really it's like I don't have the time. I can't fight. You can't fight the law because the law always wins, Kevin. So I'm going to throw myself at the mercy of the DA.
Gotta get one of those like AI lawyers who can challenge the ticket. I gotta do some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I asked for the supporting deposition and I pled not guilty, and I got to supporting deposition within like I don't know 6 days. So it was like, well, that's not gonna work. I didn't, like, damn it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just gonna ask the DA and explain to him. I got the car fixed. It was never at risk. It was never not in good shape. It was just like it's always a function of time because I work out of town so much.
Was it an inspection sticker thing?
Yeah, oh yeah.
No, I've gotten hit with those before too. Down in Canandaigua, and I was like, hey man, I lost my job and I didn't really have time to do it, and and like, okay, we're gonna change it to like a seatbelt ticket, pay like $40.
I'm gonna ask, man. I had to take a 6-hour class for that last speeding ticket I got, but no points on my license.
A clause in mine says look for errors if you can.
Oh,
gotta add a ticket.
Dark
if you can do that, great.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that. Dark closet, I'm gonna try that.
So much your money. It's not about safety. I
may have already lost all the paperwork already. Like I may have misplaced it and filed it someplace. It's just wild. Like,
but when I got the inspection ticket that I pled down, I did sort of feel like, all right, this is a little bit of a shakedown. They don't want to try to prove anything with the inspection sticker. They're just like, give us some money and we'll make this go away.
All right. That would be good. Like I don't arguably I don't want an inspection sticker to end up on my license because that could arguably jack up my insurance rates. Not necessarily that it would. I'm not a crazy. I haven't been in a lot of accidents. I'm a pretty safe driver. So, whatever. And I drive a lot, Kevin. I drive a lot.
You do?
Yeah.
All right.
I got a new truck in August. I got like 18,000 miles on it.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think I have driven maybe like 700 miles in the last year. Not a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't. That means I put that on my wife's car too, because I was driving that for a couple months. So,
wow,
yeah,
bunch. Which is why you need to get in the audiobooks because something to do.
God, I know. I have to drive. I have to drive to Pennsylvania tomorrow. So
there you go. I'll give some recommendations. Look up. I'll give you some recommendations. I think we've done discussions of like libertarian literature and shows, stuff like that. Recommend one that I really like, Old Man's War series. Great, really interesting.
Okay.
Not libertarian. It's interesting.
Okay.
John Scalzi is the author. But anyway, leave your book recommendations, audiobook recommendations for Tim. In the comments. So Tim has something to do on his way down to Pennsylvania this week.
Yeah. Never split the difference, Chris Voss. All right.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was quick.
Yeah. So on that note, though, I think we're gonna call it a night. Appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate the comments as usual. You guys rock. And yeah, we're gonna call it a night.